everybody for coming. I'm feeling very Simpsonish today, so therefore the title and Helen Lovejoy there in the corner looking scandalized. This topic actually started as an OpenSSL panic talk. So I wanted to come here and create massive panic in the audiences that, you know, it's all going to be the end of the world, just like it was with the year 2000. But to my great disappointment, the end of the world is not coming. But I would still like to change the post-quantum transition discussion a little bit. And this is why. Every time we go to the crypto conferences, every time we talk about the transition and the need for post-quantum crypto, there is always talk about this, you know, store now, decrypt later attacks. And we heard on Monday that maybe that's not so relevant. It may be, it's debatable. We also hear a lot about Grover's algorithm. We hear a lot and lot of Shor's algorithm, and we also hear of the Q-Day. And all that is good. But I think, as I will argue to you in this presentation, we should probably pay a little bit more attention to our whole identification infrastructure. It's way more complicated than we like to think it is, and it's way more global than we like to think it is. And the EU is fairly aggressive with the transition deadlines, so we need to start paying attention. And without further ado, let's jump straight to the deep end of the pool. You all love common criteria, right? Who does love common criteria? Man, this is the wrong audience. Okay. Protection profile for secure signature creation device. Part 2, device with key generation. An ancient protection profile which codifies the EU requirements for the devices that compute qualified electronic signatures. I'm going to disclose you my age when I say I was actually involved in writing these things. The assets that are protected by a secure signature creation device, we talk about the signature creation data, we talk about the signature verification data. The important thing about the signature creation data, that's basically the signing key in actual tech talk. It has to be in the sole control of the user. So you have your PKI card, and there is your key, and nobody else but you gets any access to that or can replicate it anywhere else. But what is more important, why I was thinking in terms of this panic talk. The secure signature creation device does not only guard technical assets, it guards political assets, if you wish. It's very important that the link between the signature and the signatory is unforgeable. So we have technical means of ensuring that nobody can forge digital signatures if the device that we use for computing the signatures with is of sufficient trustworthiness, and if the cryptographic algorithms and the keys are of sufficient quality. That's all good. But let's go a little bit deeper. Now, in order for the signature to be a qualified electronic signature, QES, it has to be computed for the exact data to be signed that the signatory, which is owner of the device, intended to sign. And now, clearly, if we have an adversary with the quantum with the capability of breaking, quantum cryptanalysis capable quantum computer, that attacker can indeed unforge signatures, which means they can basically violate the unforgeability between the qualified electronic signature and the data that the owner of the device actually intended to sign. And obviously, we can increase the PIN code length, we can increase the key sizes, but that's not going to help. The problem is that our crypto in this case is broken, and nothing we can do to play around with the crypto is not going to help. And this turns political, surprisingly. Well, actually not surprisingly at all. This is more from the protection profile. So the secure signature creation device is in the certified configuration when there is in place a policy about the non-repudiation of the signatures. And this basically means that the signature creation data and the signature verification data shall be implemented in such a way that the signatory cannot later deny having signed the specific data to be signed that the user signed. And what it actually means, this is where we start to get very diverse depending on the EU member state we are operating at. It was very surprising how differently different EU member states actually interpret what does it mean to be a signature. But the environment in which we operate these secure signature creation devices, it has to have in place the criteria on how the signatures are approved and made legally binding in the operational environment. And that is very political. And yet, of these policies depend the entire security of these devices. Because let's jump a little bit deeper into the protection profile. And this is a charming mapping table. These are all the security objectives that the secure signature creation device must fulfill. These are all the security objectives that must be fulfilled by the environment in which the device is operated. And we notice that if this policy of non-repudiation is not in place, practically each of these security objectives will fail. And that basically means if there is any kind of a plausible deniability of a single digital signature, that means all the security objectives of a device and the environment in which it's used fail. And that means a single forged digital signature which appears to be computed with the legitimate secure signature creation device will nullify and made obsolete our entire EU-wide global PKI and digital signature infrastructures. So we are guarding a lot here. It's way more than some hypothetical, store now, decrypt later attacks. And this is something we really have to pay attention, especially now, because if we look at the EU CC Implementing Act, we currently deal at EU CC High with the smart cards and related devices and hardware devices with crypto boxes. But that will expand. eIDAS is coming, EU ID wallets are coming, EU ICC is coming. All that will require very high assurance crypto devices which are capable of computing digital signatures. And not only that, the entire infrastructure in which they are operated at must support the whole public key infrastructure that is required by these devices to be securely operated throughout their entire life cycle. And wait, there's more. these signatures that are created with these devices, they are actually legal equivalent of handwritten signatures on paper documents. Again, what exactly it means is very different in different EU member states. But in practice, if anybody can forge your digital signature, anybody can forge your qualified electronic signature, they can basically attach to a document, and then in a legal proceedings, it will look just like you signed yourself that document. Of course, the case may be thrown out of the court. It depends how good your lawyer is, but already the possibility is very alarming. And this identification infrastructure is in everything. We have global identification systems which depend on similar smart cards, for example, e-passports. Somewhere here, yeah. There is the picture of a little chip. That means there is a common criteria EAL4 plus certified chip inside the data page, and that is used as an identification token every time you cross a border where the passport is checked. There are the EUDI wallets, there is the eSIM, EU ICC, eIDAS cards, everything. There are the payment products, your Visa cards, your MasterCards, they use similar chips. Then, of course, when we go to high assurance software, high assurance crypto devices, we have all these very high assurance use cases starting from the boot time integrity checks of the software, ending in the network security protocols, admin protocols where we can actually legally bind the administrator to the admin accesses they had on the device and so forth. So this is in everything, and we have to pay attention. And we all know these devices are very complex. They are nice and tiny, but they are probably the most secure computers we ever use in our lives. And identification devices are based on very high assurance IC chips. Even Java cards nowadays are routinely evaluated and certified to EAL6+. They have very complex lifecycle models. Think of your passport. Think of your electronic ID card if you have. Think of all the stages in the designing of the chip, in the manufacturing of the chip, in the manufacturing of the plastic, in the getting of your personal data into the same chip, which is personalized for you, getting that chip to you with the PIN code that you need for using it and so forth. It's complex. And typically these lifecycle models, they span several continents. A lot of the manufacturing of these chips is in Southeast Asian countries, some of them in East Asia. I used to run around a lot auditing those manufacturing sites. I have lots of horror stories to tell, but we leave that to another presentation. And once they are issued, they are really hard to patch. I'm a dyslexic Balt. I'm an Estonian. I have the Estonian e-residency card. And I'm one of those guys whose card had to be replaced because there was the vulnerability in the chip. And I was living in Australia at the time, and it took me a lot of traveling to actually get to somewhere where I can get my new card. And again, your chip is nothing. Your ID card is nothing. Your e-passport is nothing unless there is a massively complex back-end operation to utilize it. And these things, they are complex, they are very advanced, which means they take a lot of time to develop. Once they are developed, or in parallel to the development, they go through the formal certifications, and that's easily another 12 to 18 months. So lifespans are complex because we have to maintain this entire product lifecycle, entire certification life cycles and so forth. And once these devices are issued, they have usually in the minimum 5 years of validity. Finnish passport is valid for 5 years because the signatures on your identification data are by law valid for 5 years. Now they are talking of expanding that to 10 years, and that's going to be a nice can of worms because right now is the really bad time. Because 2030 and 2035 are approaching real fast. Okay. Nobody liked common criteria here. Who knows why 2030 is such a problem for us? Okay. The EU has their coordinated implementation roadmap, as they call it, with the transition to the post-quantum crypto. By the end of next year, every member state has to implement the first steps in becoming PQC compliant. Whatever those first steps are remains to be seen. By the end of 2030, for high-risk use cases, we expect the PQC transition to have been completed. And by 2035, the transition in the medium-risk use cases has been completed. And observe that also, by default, any software and firmware upgrades after 2030 should have a quantum-safe crypto enabled in it. So we don't really have that much time. And the devices are complex. We already talked about that. Here, it's kind of silly. This is a sort of a high-level architectural view of an EU ICC chip. That's basically a secure element which goes into your mobile phone. It is fixed there, and it replaces the removable SIM card. And yet, it's drawn the shape of a SIM card. But if we look at this, we have the hardware. Somewhere there is your smart card integrated circuit hardware, and there is lots of it, including the crypto accelerators, including the secure memories, including the secure buses, everything. And there are a couple of German protection profiles that you can use to certify that hardware against. Then there is the Java card platform. Then there is the global platform framework, and there are a couple of protection profiles for that. Then there is the APIs, and then there is basically an abstraction layer, such as the crypto service provider stuff and everything. So all these foundations, we understand the security, just that there is lots of compliance that needs to be done, and lots of common criteria evaluation and certification to be done for the device to be compliant. And then at the application layer, we can have, for example, electronic identification wallet application, and inside that wallet, we have our driver's licenses, our passports, our trade licenses, you name it. And this is just the device. And funny thing is that these red bits, they are the protection profiles which are for the technology. But if you want to, for example, certify your device as a protection profile for a in compliance with secure signature creation device protection profile, that protection profile is actually for the entire application. So it has to include all these elements, plus the application-specific things. The good news is that this is all, I'm a lazy person. I'm not drawing anything myself. I'm just copying and pasting. So all my slides have references where these things come from. So if they are of your interest, that's where you find more. But here is then the reference architecture for example, the EU DI wallet. So somewhere there, we again have our secure element. We have the hardware, we have basically the low-level firmware and low-level security primitives, and then we have the wallet secure application which implements all kinds of different applets and whatnot. And that one then interacts over some protocol with the wallet application that resides in the user device, for example, a mobile phone. And that mobile phone then interacts with lots and lots of outside world entities. And if we look at the trust infrastructure, we have a whole bunch of different parties involved in making sure that these EUDI wallets can be deployed in a secure manner, they can be operated in a secure manner throughout their entire life cycle. And because there will be identification applets in the wallet, we have to make sure that this entire infrastructure is operated in such a manner that nobody can forge the signatures, even if we assume that after 2030 there will be a cryptanalysis capable quantum computer in our presence. Again, that's highly debatable whether it's going to happen, but that's the planning target. EU is not alone with this. Australia is also going for 2030. US, I believe, is going for 2035, so they're a bit slow learners there. But we are facing a huge transition. The entire infrastructure will have to be updated. And it gets more fun. We mentioned the e-passport. Well, the e-passport specifications are done by ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. And they run their own PKI infrastructure. And now, when you go and cross a border, you just present your passport to the border control station, an automated reader, or sometimes to a really bored border control officer. And what happens here is that the signature on your personal data, which was signed by the issuing authority of the passport when the passport was issued, including your biometric identification, is verified against the entire backend, which is run by different countries and different organizations. And currently, there are 105 countries present or participating in this ICAO public key infrastructure. And if we want to be quantum safe, it would be nice if all of them were quantum safe. Because if there is a possibility of a forgery of a signature, that means somebody who is not quantum ready can actually issue passports which can be forged because the signatures that are binding the data on the passport to the individual can be forged. Okay, NIS2 trustworthiness for the entity, Cyber Resiliency Act for the trustworthiness of the product. And digital infrastructures, they are all cybersecure, they are all critical sectors in terms of NIS2. So that's why in order to comply with the NIS2 and in order to provide us the operational environment we need for the legitimacy of the digital signatures that we compute, we need this whole backend to transform to post-quantum crypto and also to be NIS2 compliant. We're running out of time here, and I don't want to be the man who stands in between you and your lunch. It's almost as dangerous as, standing there in the morning between the crowd of people and the coffee machine. But then again, I like to live dangerously. Just a reminder, the Cyber Resiliency Act concerns with the products with digital elements, and all these devices that we've been talking about, they are critical products with digital elements. That means they fall under the EU CC scheme. EU CC has currently 2 domains, smart cards and similar and related devices, and hardware devices with crypto boxes. These are very much the components, smart cards and related devices. So the evaluation and certification facilities will be very, very busy in the near future. But hey, good news, everyone. Anybody here watches Futurama? Finally some hands. So this is where my panic talk fails. And I'm very disappointed that I didn't manage to get good panic anywhere here. But actually the integrated circuit industry is really good at putting together high assurance integrated circuits, high assurance embedded software. The ITSF's evaluation facilities under EU CC are really good at evaluating these devices and evaluating their software and evaluating their lifecycle models. And the good news is that we are using very similar components in the entire infrastructure. We are using devices with very similar requirements, so we don't actually need to reinvent a whole lot of new wheels. It's enough that we use the existing wheels and put them under different carriages to make these devices and then later the infrastructure more compliant. And the regulators are wide awake and the industry is adapting. We are hearing lots of talks here also about the crypto agility, crypto inventories, whatnot. So we are preparing for the change. And as an IT industry, we are very used to change. Everything is constantly changing. 9 seconds. Some conclusions. We are talking of non-repudiation, which is very much a legal problem enforced by technical means. And right now, there is a big transition happening. EU is driving the change here. NIST is driving the change in the US. It's happening everywhere, but we also have these international organizations like ICAO who are doing their own part. So we are working together as an industry to make the world a better place. Happy little Vegemites, all of us. Thank you. Please, questions.
A couple of years back, I read the slides by ICAO that were showing that with these passport checks at the borders, around half of them couldn't pass the cryptographic verification. Like many countries have failed to implement the passports correctly around the year 2015, 2020. So do you know if this has improved? Because if they fail to do symmetric crypto, how are we expecting them to do PQC?
That's actually a good point, but unfortunately I haven't followed that closely recently, so I'm not able to comment that one. Sorry.
Thank you.
And we had another one.
In implementing all this, to what degree will the private sector be involved in financing and developing everything?
Well, the private sector, actually, if all the ID cards and such, all the e-passports, everything, they have to be procured by somebody. So, for example, in Finland, our ID card is not mandatory. So if you choose to have your ID card, then you pay for it. Whether the money you pay for it is actually representative of the cost of the card, I don't know. Passports are getting crazy expensive. So in the end, it's the end users who are paying for it. And most of these organizations, the developers, the evaluation facilities, now with the EU CC, even the certifiers, they are operating on a commercial basis. So most operators on the domain are actually private sector entities. So we've been sort of systematically dumping the government guys out of the way.
One more, okay.
It was pretty striking to me to hear that the validity of passports is actually moving up in years and then not down. Do you have an idea why that's happening and why it's going from 5 years to 10 years? Maybe it's quite, you know, most things nowadays around identity are kind of getting shorter in duration. Certificates on the internet, for example, are a good case.
Yeah, in Finland, for example, with the passport, the 5-year validity, because it's very impractical, because most countries, when you enter, you need at least half a year of validity of passport before they let you in. And now with the public sector, it may actually take a fair bit of time to get your passport once you apply for it. So effectively 5 years validity means a little bit over 4 years of effective use. And people are unhappy with that. And in a sense, if the validity is only about the signatures on the identification data, then, you know, just as long as we don't have a quantum computer, just use longer keys. There is enough memory on the chips to store longer certificates and longer keys. So in that sense, I don't see it as a massively huge problem why we couldn't change the legislation so that the signatures can be valid for up to 10 years. Just have to make sure that the key sizes are long. And now, if we are moving to post-quantum crypto, then there is some uncertainty. We really don't know how secure those signature algorithms will be. But to some extent, we just need a little bit more memory, and we can do the same key lengthening again, assuming there is no catastrophic failures in the algorithms. So there's been a lot of political debate, and people are unhappy with the short lifetime, so the politicians are actually very rarely they are listening to the people and trying to extend the lifetime. So it's very political.
Yeah, right, makes sense. Thanks.
Amazing question. Thank you for that. We don't have a time actually. Yeah, lunch is coming. So thank you one more time. Big applause for you, J.Leiwo.